They are allowed to vote for the Knesset, the second category, and they are allowed to be elected to the Israeli parliament, but at the same time, they are actually excluded from any coalition inside Israel. Since 1948 until now, maybe there's been about 17 governments in Israel. In none of these governments, in none of them, a party, an Arab party was part of the coalition. So they elect their members to the Knesset, but when they get there, they are actually eternal minority, and they are always on the opposition, no matter who the government is, whether it's from the left side or the right side. So they are actually very marginal. They cannot do much.
Marginalized.
They are marginalized by the political system, by the legal system, and so on. And the third category are the Palestinians who are living in Jerusalem, and that Israel granted them only residency rights. They get blue IDs that in the color and the shape look like the IDs that Israeli citizens have, but at the same time they are not allowed to vote for the Knesset because they are not citizens of Israel. They are only residents, which means they have residency rights that they can lose or forfeit very easily. It's like somebody who immigrated to Australia and lived in Australia for a few years and acquired residency rights in Australia because he's a businessman or she got married to an Australian man and so on, and they can lose that status if they acquire another citizenship, okay, a foreign citizenship. If they acquire other residency, for example, a green card, if some Palestinian from Jerusalem acquires green card, they immediately take his ID, take his blue ID, which means he cannot live in his homeland, in his home city. He cannot come back to his home city. Or if they live for about 7 years outside of Jerusalem, anywhere outside of Jerusalem or Israel, if they live 7 years or more outside of that area, they lose their residency rights.
Even the West Bank.
Even the West Bank, which is 1 kilometer outside, even 2 meters outside of the municipal borders. Okay, and they are being pushed out of Jerusalem because Israel, in terms of housing, they are not giving enough housing to them, and so on, so forth, and they do leave outside of the West Bank because they have no housing solutions. And once they leave, they said, okay, now that you have left Jerusalem, you lose your residency status, and we take your blue ID, and they cannot come back and live in their hometown. And that's a policy. It's a clear policy by Israel. We call it the quiet transfer, and Israel calls it quite clearly. We have to keep the demographic balance in Jerusalem so that Palestinians in Jerusalem would never become more than 30% of the population of Jerusalem, what they call United Jerusalem. So that's the third class of citizens.
That's 30% of the walls, or
no. In the municipal borders of Jerusalem,
right.
Inside the municipal borders of Jerusalem, you have today about 900,000 persons. That's the population of Jerusalem. Around 30% of that are Palestinians. So Israel says we don't want more than 30% of the population of Jerusalem, because they want Jerusalem to be a Jewish city with a minority that is acceptable. Not a very big minority of Palestinians inside Jerusalem. So in order to keep that balance, that demographic balance, they use all tricks that you can think of. One of them is driving the population outside of Jerusalem by not planning for the Palestinians inside Jerusalem. One other thing that you might know of was the law that Israel enacted in the year 2002, and it has been renewed since then. It's a temporary law, supposedly, which basically says that there is no what we call family reunification. Family reunification means, in our terms, is when you have a mixed marriage between a Palestinian from East Jerusalem or even from inside Israel, from the Class B or Class C that we mentioned. If one of them gets married to a spouse from Class D, that we will talk about soon, which are the Palestinians who live in the West Bank, okay? If you have that kind of marriage, that mixed marriage, okay, the Palestinian who lives in Jerusalem or inside Israel cannot basically bring their spouse to live with them in Jerusalem or inside Israel. It's forbidden by law.
Can you show us, can we find cases of people?
Dozens.
So couples that have been
Couples
split.
that are split.
You can find us couples?
I know, we can go and take you to couples to see them.
It's okay.
Are split. They say if you want to live with your spouse, you leave Israel and live with your spouse in the West Bank or in Jordan or wherever, but not in our country, not inside Israel. Again, to keep the demographic balance, it's driving out Palestinians. So if you want to fall in love, you'd better know what your spouse, what ID, what class your beloved partner has. Otherwise, you might have to leave your country to be able to be with your with your lady, with your spouse, with your man.
Class D.
Class D are the Palestinians who are living in the West Bank. They have a different color of ID. Until 1993, Israel was issuing the IDs to those persons. We're talking about, in the West Bank, about around 2 million Palestinians, 2.2. The number is not quite clear because we don't, there's always an issue about that. There's the Israeli number, there's the Palestinian number regarding that. After 1993, after the PA was established, those IDs are being given to the Palestinians by the PA. When a Palestinian citizen becomes 16 or 17, he goes to the Palestinians, to the Ministry of Civil Affairs, Palestinian Ministry of Civil Affairs, to get that ID.
Yes.
Okay, today.
Yes.
So they have a different ID with a different color. Yet, 21 years today, 21 years after Oslo, and when you have the PA and you have a government and you have a prime minister for government and whatever ministries, the population registrar is still controlled by Israel. The PA actually cannot issue one single ID without the approval of Israel. Now, today, Israel controls fully the registrar, the population registrar of Palestine. If you want to change your address as a Palestinian from Gaza to Ramallah, you need the approval of Israel, the occupation of the civil administration, which is the civil face of the military occupation. And they don't give that. They don't give that approval to change your address from one place to another inside Palestine, inside the occupied territories. We bring cases to the Israeli court, to the Israeli courts against the refusal of the military occupation to change the address in the IDs that you have to carry on with you all the time. Not carrying on your ID with you is a criminal offense in Israel, and of course it's a criminal offense in the West Bank, in the occupied territory. Now, Class D, they are subject to a different judicial system. Class D, they are subject to the system that is actually military orders. Today it's mixed, actually. It's some military orders and some are pieces of legislation that were enacted by the Palestinian parliament since 1993 until now. So a Palestinian who commits any kind of a crime against Israel, against the occupation, against settlers, he will be brought,
Israeli law.
He will be brought to a military court that implements military orders, not Israeli laws, military orders. It's a different set of rules, much worse than Israeli laws. While Israeli settler, who lives also in the occupied territory, if he commits the same offense, he will be brought to an Israeli court, an Israeli civil court, not an Israeli military court, and the law applicable to him will be the Israeli law, which is a law that is more developed, better, a little bit more in terms of protecting human rights and so on. So today, Class D is still subject to military orders, and Class D, of course, in terms of freedom of movement, they cannot leave the West Bank anywhere without permits. For Israel, they need permits. For Class D, there's about 80 types of permits to come to Israel. 80 types of permits. The whole life of Palestinians in the West Bank is really is going around permits. I mean, wherever you go, in a social event, you visit friends, you have a nice dinner, you have a meeting. All what they speak about is permits. We are not being able to get permit to Jerusalem. It's a permit to go to the mosque. It's a permit to go to the hospital. It's a permit to go to work. It's a permit to go to visit a friend or to visit a patient. So many types of permits. So Class D is fully controlled by the occupation in a very complicated system of military orders, permit systems, and what have you. Of course, leaving the country, also you need a permit. Cultivating your land that remained on the Israeli side of the wall, you need a permit. Going to your land to cultivate your land, you need a permit. And a permit is not an easy thing. Sometimes you need a lawyer to get the permit. You need to go to a lawyer to pay the fees so that you will take a case to the court, so that you will be able to get a permit to go to the hospital or to cultivate your land. I mean, it's really, it's such a crazy reality. It's a reality where you are being, suffocated, stifled every day.
So Class E?
So now Class E maybe would be Gaza. The people who are living in Gaza, they are in even a situation that is worse because they are in a jail. I mean, it's a big jail. They cannot move outside of Gaza. To Israel, they cannot move for sure. They cannot enter Israel. And to go to the West Bank is almost impossible because usually they need to go through Israel, to cross Israel, to be able to go to the West Bank. And this is also, they are maybe in the worst situation. And the only way out to the world is through Egypt. And through Egypt is first of all costly. They need to go, very long way from Egypt, from Gaza to Cairo, to be able to get to the first airport, to be able to go, to the international world, to the international community. And from the sea, of course, the sea is closed. They cannot go through the sea because the sea is controlled by Israel.
But it's hard now to get permits to go into Egypt, isn't it? It's very hard for
it's very hard as well. It's not easy because that's a different story. Israel, even according to the agreements, when Israel withdrew its military forces from Gaza, even then, they did not say, okay, now we are out of Gaza, let the Palestinians in Gaza live their free life. They insisted to have a system whereby they can monitor who comes in and out from Gaza. They wanted the full control over that with the help of the Europeans and a very complicated system of cameras and so on, so that they can really control and ask, this guy should be searched, this guy should be prevented from coming into Gaza, and so on and so forth. So that's the system that Israel implemented for a few years in Gaza after the withdrawal of the Israeli soldiers from Gaza until Hamas took over in the year 2006 or 7, I think.